Jesus. All right, we're live. Cool. All right. So the way that this works, if you look at the actual, so it's not only important the number thing here, right, which is the sequence there in the citation, but see there's how little punctuation marks after some of these? Period, period, comma. Oh, you can't kiss my cursor? You can. Period, period, comma, 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 period. After those little words, right? So that's the punctuation that goes after that item in the MLA bibliography. So for example, if we're going to do Solinsky's book, Rule for Radicals, right? The first thing is the author. So it would be Alinsky, comma, Sol, and then a period, right? And then it would be the title of the source, which is Rules for Radicals in italics, and then a comma. And there'd be other contributors. So if there was an editor or a translator or a revisionist or somebody who compiled it, right, that would go there. There's not for Solinsky's Rules for Radicals. So there's no, number 4 doesn't exist. Version, since it's not an electronic document, it's not periodical, there's no version. Number, that's like National Geographic, for example, right, has freaking versions and numbers. So like you have National Geographic, like spring issue or like March of 2020, I guess, if they're still making National Geographic, right? So the version would be February, the number would be 2. So there's 12 freaking numbers in a year, right? 1 for each month, right? The version would be February, the number would be 2, right? And that's for like periodicals or magazines that are published monthly or quarterly or semi-annually, right? So you have like I don't know how often, like, actually that's a stupid example. I was gonna say the Victoria's Secret semi-annual sale thing, but that's only twice a year, and it's not a publication, it's just a sale. But if they sell a coupon book, let's say, for the semi-annual sale twice a year, right? Then those would be version of would be whatever month it was sent out. So say like July and December, right? And it'd be number 1, number 2. And the next year, right, it would be then like 2021, number 1, number 2, if you were citing the coupon book for the Victoria's Secret semi-annual sale or whatever it is, right? All right, the publisher is, of course, who published it. So the Penguin published it, right? Random House. McGraw-Hill, whoever it was, right, is a publisher. And then a comma, the date, i.e. like, so for those radicals, like 1968, right? Location would be like New York, London, whatever. We'll go through it and actually do it for some examples of actual sources in a second, but I just want to clarify what the hell this data asks for, right? So these are the 9 things that will be in an MLA citation in the current edition, right? Nothing other than that will be in there. So the one, like it says, like each element corresponding punctuation works from above. Early editions of the handbook include publication, which doesn't exist anymore, so I don't know why they mention it, right? So for example, the author, right? So so in the document they just go through examples, right? So this is his name's Homie K Baba, right? So it's Baba, comma Homie K. The title of the source in italics, right? Then more examples of like, so there's different kinds of things, of course, right? It's a book, it's actually a full book, it's in italics. If it's like a poem or a chapter of a book, it's in quotation marks and not italics. And there are rules for that on the website. We can go over that. If it's for example, Parks and Recreation, the title of a TV show, right, it is in italics the same way as if it was a book, right? If it's I don't know, if it's a zine or whatever, or like an article, yada yada. It kind of just depends so much now with all the online sources that like you have to know the exact source, right? So a container, right, might be an article post. So a container is a stupid thing that MLA is into it. Like whatever, like it makes sense, like whatever contains the source, right? So if you have an anthology of literature, like Norton anthology of literature that has poems and short stories and everything, right? The container is Norton anthology of literature, right? And everything inside of it, whether it's a poem or short story, right, is the content. So the same thing though for like a TV show, right? So if you have Seinfeld, like the container is the whole freaking however many episodes there are of Seinfeld, right? And then the smaller container is season 3, and then episode whatever, right? So container is just something MLA made up to like delineate anthologies, collections, freaking seasons of shows, a podcast. If you like Joe Rogan podcast, right? Like the podcast like season 8, episode 1, 2, 8, 5, or whatever it is, right? The word on the street is that the MLA is getting rid of the whole container idea because it was freaking retarded from the beginning, and so like it's going away. So as much as we have to do it right now, don't put too much stock in it or memorize it exactly right because it's not something that's stuck apparently. But anyways, so other contributors, right? Illustrators. If you're doing a children's book, right, the illustrator of the book, or if you're doing translations or an edited volume, right, like or an abridged version, right, that would be the other contributor. Like I said, it's all in the document. The version right? So there's also like a second or third edition of a book. So say that there's we have, for example, the T.S. Eliot's poem "The Wasteland" was first released in 1922, and then there were changes to it in 23 and 24 from different presses. They were words that were added because there were mistakes in the first one, notes were added, whatever. So every different edition would be a different version of the book, right? But they have versions too, because if you're like citing software or an internet portal or something, right, that has like the actual version up there, like version 2.4.6 of like the Affordable Care Act website, right? So I use the word version to include both editions, numbers, and freaking like versions of digital sources. Like I said, sequence, like if it's a multi-volume book or journal, or like the National Geographic or a literary journal or whatever, right? Publisher, so like whoever actually printed the damn book, right? Like Museum of Modern Art, New York Times, freaking Random House, Penguin, etc. The dates it actually was published the first time. For television series, you might have it aired on a network at a different date, but released on Netflix at a different date than that. So if it has more than one date, just use the date that's most relevant to your writing, which is like, again, that would be kind of stupid. Like, it used to be, it used to be like, what the first date was ever released, right? What's the date? You can find that, right? So like, a freaking Star Wars was released in like 1983. I'm not sure if it was or not, but it was released in 1983, right? They re-released like a new version that had like better explosions or whatever in like 1997. Like, you can still cite 1983 as the publication date of it, right? Even if the version you're using has like explosions, because the thing wasn't made in 83 or in 97, right? And the content hasn't changed within special effects, but this changed that too. So whatever date is most relevant means that you can live your truth and cite your truth, and like whatever freaking date you want, put it. You put the day you watch it on Netflix, right? You could put the date you subscribe to Netflix first. The first day kind of makes the whole date thing like kind of pointless, but also like really flexible. So just make sure you put a date and don't just make one up, but like have some relevance to it. Like, I'm not gonna go check and like either hack your computer or interrogate you and be like, when was the first date you saw Lost on freaking Netflix or whatever, right? Was it with commercials, without commercials? And if your date doesn't match up with the bibliography, I'm gonna fail you. I'm not gonna do that, right? Just say a date that's reasonable. Other professors might have issues with that. I don't really think that they could, but don't just make it up and say 1965, because like actually think about it a second. Like, okay, I probably watched it first, like, you know, when I was a senior in high school, which would be like this date, whatever, right? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course, excellent literary choice. Location, so identifying the work's location. Usually it's like, so location is like where it is inside the publication itself, right? So if you're studying a short story within the Northern mythology literature, right? I'm saying James Joyce's story, The Portrait of the Artist, is a young man, right? And there's like, it's one from pages 125 to 195, right? You would put that at the end of the citation, right? Or in more specifics, if you're only talking about a short part of the story, right, and you're only talking about pages like 103 to 105, just put that. So when it says like the location, you should do the page numbers, not just of the work itself, but that you're actually referencing, right? Because the whole original idea with a citation, right, is to help somebody else who reads your work one day and is like, damn, this is brilliant. Like, I would like to like see where they got their information from, so I could go back and like understand how they think and like, wow, see how cool their mind is and works, right? So it's supposed to like pinpoint as much as possible where you got the location, the work from, so they could go back and read the quotes or whatever that you read and think what you think, or I guess challenge you if they don't agree, right? That's the idea. Same thing with location. Also, instead of page numbers now, right, it could also be a freaking website URL as well as the access date, right? Especially because, unfortunately, you have like even stuff that's published online. It's like a book-length thing on like Project Gutenberg or Project Muse, right? It's a web page. It doesn't have freaking page numbers on it, right? So in that case, there used to be a whole idea. What you would do is you convert it to PDF, right, or hit Command P, right, and save it as a PDF, and then find the freaking page you actually work on when you were quoting from, which would be easy because then somebody who's reading your paper could like go in and look at it and see exactly where you're quoting from. Not anymore. You just put the URL for the whole damn thing, and then it's up to whoever to go find it or not find it. So like, if you can't tell, I'm a little bitter with the MLA because it seems like they're like not helping what they're actually supposed to be helping with and charging people a ton of money to do it. And you still have, like, I think I'm probably the only comp professor in the college, maybe the UT system, that doesn't require an MLA handbook be purchased. But like, it's like, I mean, if you buy that, the terrorists win, man. In my opinion. So anyways, so that's the whole background. So, and this is all just examples of the different kind of 8 or 9 things you could use. But this is really your bread and butter as far as citing and freaking any kind of work, right? and we can clarify what each of these would be in relation to what article you found. But if you even just write down author, title, period, title source, period, container, comma, author, contributors, comma, version, comma, and these 8 things in the consultant every time you do a bibliographic entry, you'll more or less be golden or pretty dang close to golden, right? Also, if you put something in a citation machine generator, right, and then consult this table and make sure that those things line up, it doesn't look sexy. Then look at you. It's you. Hi. Say hi. There's freedoms. And make sure they line up with what the citation machine is spitting out. You should generally be in pretty good standing. All right. Any quiet? I mean, we'll go when we actually start looking at our articles we brought in for today. We'll actually put this to work. Any questions over that right now at all? No? All right. Fine. Sorry, it's like snack time. Oh, my cute son. Making mass reading today? Only what's tuition a semester? Only $5,000. Cut right up. It's good work if you can get it, I suppose. I mean, for him. All right. All right. So now we're just at this. Without further ado, back to that. Did people read some more and finish that first introduction, like the prologue or whatever? Not the prologue, but the first next couple pages of the chapter. Are we doing reading on our own time? Because I mean, we do a lot in class, which is good, but like at the same time, it's gonna go a little bit faster if we step it up on our own a little bit and freaking read some more of the text during our downtimes or during between classes, right? I'm okay with doing most of it in class, but there's some important stuff we got to get to that we'd be like missing a lot of a lot of content if we just read it in class and that was all we read. So let's go ahead and pull it up again, like always. Oh, pasting go. Let's go. Oh man, maybe they pulled it down. Well, that's okay because I think I uploaded it. Haha. Right, yeah, you can't beat me, internet. They probably realized someone's actually reading it and using it. And they're like, oh, we got to take it down now. Too late, I saved it. Okay, cool. Oh, 23, you sound good. All right, whatever then, dude. All right. All right. All right, cool. Okay, so remember we just talked last time about like the difference between like what an ideology and fundamental truths are, right? But like, okay, for the Marxists, like the fundamental truth is like everything is a base of class conflict, right? Economics and haves and have-nots, right, is the basis of the Marxist view of the world, right? So everything in Marxist ways will follow from that. From a Christian point of view, like the Trinity and Christ's divinity is the basic point of Christianity. Everything in Christ believes in follows from that, right? This is what he's talking about. So now he's talking about then how to use this kind of ideas about ideology, the ways that people just work with the world, right, in order to cause political change, right? Here's where we're at. Okay, so the whole point again, too, right, is just saying, okay, unlike people who watch the world as it is, which is what we most want to be optimists and see the world like as we would like it to be and not believe it's a bunch of crap, right? But then it says we turn on the evening news every night, right, and we see the world's actually crap. We're kind of disillusioned, yeah? So he says, like, we need to actually deal with reality as it is, and we should find it in order to actually have the possibility for change, right? All right. So life seems to lack rhyme or reason or even a shadow of order unless we approach it with a key of converses, meaning things that are opposing to each other, right? If you don't have life or view life with things that are opposing forces, he says you lack the key and understand the way things operate, right? Seeing everything in its duality, we begin to get some dim clues in the direction and what it's all about. It is in these contradictions that their incessant interacting tensions that creativity begins. As we begin to accept the concept of contradictions, we see every problem or issue in its whole and interrelated sense. We then recognize that for every positive, there's a negative, and that for nothing positive without its concomitant negative, or any political paradise without its negative side, right? Which is saying, basically, like, communism has some good things, like freaking Solzhenitsyn was saying about, right? There's equity, there's the idea of supposed equality and outcome, right? But it has some negative things too, because it usually gets corrupt, and you end up having a lawless tyranny like the Soviet Union, right? The same thing, capitalism has its benefits, material success, comfort, wealth, etc., right? But there's the spiritual death that Solzhenitsyn talks about that has gone along with that historically, right? So you're saying that there's no perfect system, there's no perfect solution, right? Everything has a good effect and everything has side effects. Like look at like medication, right? Even today, right? There are effects that are going to help you with your medical condition. However, there are side effects that will arise as well. And as long as those don't outweigh the effects, it's a good thing to be on the medication, maybe, right? However, if the side effects, the unintended effects begin to outweigh the reason you're taking the medication and causes more problems, right? Then maybe you stop taking the medication. He's saying the same kind of idea is an idea to look at politics through as well, right? What are the downsides to every upside, right? So everywhere you look, all change shows this complementarity, meaning like things that are both like bad and good complement each other, right? In Chicago, the people of Upton Sinclair's jungle, then the worst slum in America, crushed by starvation wages when they worked, demoralized, disease, living in rotten shacks, were organized. Their banners proclaimed equality for all races, job security, and a decent life for all. With their power, they fought on and won. Today, as part of the middle class, they're also part of our racist, discriminatory culture, right? So, anybody ever heard of the book The Jungle by Upton Sinclair? So it was a work of fiction, right, about life in Chicago and effectively in a meat processing plant. And so everybody's, going to breakfast eating sausages and bacon and, ground beef or whatever, right? And he actually went into some meat processing plants, was noticing like all the turpentine and freaking like bleach they were dumping in the meat, and how there'd be like rancid meat and rats would freaking climb in it, and they just turn the meat grinder with the rats in the sausage or whatever, and so you'd have like whole rats chewed up with the meat. It made a lot of people be like, well, what the hell? Like, we're just eating this stuff, and like everybody has no idea what's going on inside the processing plant, right? That's kind of the idea, like how the sausage gets made. That old saying too kind of comes from Upton Sinclair's jungle. And basically, people were so revolted with what the jungle was describing, even though it was a work of quote unquote fiction, right? That there were like riots in Chicago at like meat processing plants and demand for the government to put regulations in place to stop like what was going on there, right? And even though it wasn't like a piece of journalism, it was a realistically fictional novel, right? It had a political effect, and people changed the way that like the FDA was created, right? And there were like processing requirements for what people were going to eat were then enforced, right? Also, the people who worked in the meat processing plant, right, is depicted in the jungle would oftentimes like lose a hand on the chopping line, right? It was just thrown into the sausage too. And there's no protection for freaking the people who were working there under starvation wages, right? So it was the catalyst for a lot of social change in America, right? And he's saying that people who like use that to rise up, people who use the jungle as a starting point to get political change, are now the middle class, are now pretty well taken care of, right? Have better wages because of the work that they've done and because of the movement that was started because of the jungle, right? But now they're the ones who are in turn oppressing and demoralizing those who are lowerly socioeconomically privileged than them, right? He says the racist, discriminatory culture of Chicago at that point in time, right? Because now that they have some more money, have made it through their middle wages, there's a lower class of people who are less economically privileged and are racially and ethnically diverse that they can then like section off and put down too, right? So he's saying like the upside of Chicago after the jungle is people got better wages who were working class in the meatpacking plants, conditions improved. The downside is that wasn't everybody, right? There are still a group of people who didn't have the benefit of being part of the movement that the jungle caused, right? And so he's saying we have to still look at like, even when there's a battle that's won, right, what other battles need to be fought in order to keep progress going, right? The Tennessee Valley Authority was one of the prized jewels of the Democratic crown. Visitors came from every part of the world to see, admire, and study the physical and social achievement of a free society. Today it is the scourge of the Cumberland Mountains, strip mining for coal and wreaking havoc in the countryside. So the Tennessee Valley Authority was like a conglomerate, right, that went into an area in Tennessee and said, we're going to have like an intentional community with like racial diversity and equal housing and everything, and have the government subsidize like not a commune, but like an equal township, right? And then they gave like land rights to people and mineral rights to people, and then a bunch of strip mining companies came in because it was like free mineral rights, and just started like tearing down the beautiful mountains and like putting like strip mines. You know what strip mines are? Not like strip malls, which is like just a mall. It's like in a strip, right? It's like they take all the trees off first, and the tops all lot, and then they just like have them dig all the soil out bit by bit and sift through it and get all the minerals out of it, as opposed to like shaft mining, which is like you dig into the mountain and you get the coal out, right? This is like we're just gonna take the mountain away until we actually get to the coal, right? So it looks a lot uglier and is more bad for the environment than the whole just get the coal out of the mountain thing, right? All right. So the CIO was a militant champion of Americans' workers, and its ranks directly and indirectly were all of Americans' radicals. They fought the corporate structure of the nation and won. Today, merged with the AFL, is an entrenched member of the establishment, and its leaders supports the war in Vietnam. So everybody hear of the AFL-CIO? Anybody ever? It's the American Federation of Laborers, right? It's like one of the first unions that was ever formed in America to protect people who had manual labor jobs, to make sure they had benefits and negotiating power and wages, right? He's like, even though they were once radicals and like trying to help people who were underprivileged, now they're like, everybody who runs the freaking labor union donates to political parties. It's all the money from government, right? It's more or less like in bed with both Democrats and Republicans at the top of the country, right? So like, there's nobody to help the underprivileged lower class people anymore, right? Another example is today's high-rise public housing projects, originally conceived and carried through as major advances in ridding cities of slums. They involved the tearing down of rotting, rat-infested tenements and the erection of modern apartment buildings. They were claimed as America's refusal to permit its people to live in the dirty shambles of the slums. It is common knowledge that they have turned into jungles of horror and now confront us with the problem of how we can either convert or get rid of them. They've been compounds of double segregation, both on the basis of economy and race, and a danger for anyone compelled to live in these projects. A beautiful, positive dream has grown to a negative nightmare. Right. So like this is another idea too of the way that the government can take ideas that are supposed to promote equality, right, and through their like pursuing of that, right, can turn them into just further entrenched systems of discrimination or further entrenched systems wherein nothing changes, right? So because at the point in time where it's okay, here's housing for folks, right? And then the government doesn't take care of the housing or have anything to do with like the upkeep of the housing, right? And then the government says to anybody who's like, hey, this is not a safe place to live or a fit place to live or a clean up place to live. Like, well, it's free, so shut the F up and go away, right? And so the government has double control over the people who are living there because the government put them there and built them for the people, right? And then they can't get out because the government has them already like entrenched there, right? And it's intergenerational a lot of times in these kind of government-provided living communities, right? And the government has no reason to make it better because it's not like people are going to move out. If somebody moves out or just happens to go away, find somewhere else to live or escapes, right? At least out of the place, then they have a waiting list of other people to come in. And most of the people who are there though can't get out because, like, how are you gonna make enough money to pay a down payment and rent on a place when the only reason you're getting the place paid for right now is because you make below a certain amount of money, right? So you make $1,400 a month, let's say, right? And in order to be qualified to live in these places, you have to make under $1,400 a month, right? The down payment on a place is like $900. First month's rent's $900, right? So stop hitting buttons. Dude, don't do that. And so, that's a good question. We gotta fix this now, dude. HDMI input, maybe. What you do? I know. No. You jacked this up good. Oh, dude, how'd you do that? Okay, well, hang on, buddy. Oh, weird. Okay. That's fine, buddy. Buddy, you're fine. You're fine. I know. It'd be funner if there was something for the students to look at, wouldn't there? But you made that impossible. Not my fault, huh? Play with it. Play with it. Play with it. Or don't. Come here. All right, so I'm trying to find where this question mark button that says to hit is. Dude. I'll just, if y'all can pull it up on your freaking computers, or just listen intently. What do you want? You want more crackers? I thought you wanted more crackers. No. You want a snack. No. You are Jonathan. Okay. I don't know what you want. You want to decide real quick? What do you want? You can't play on the computer. Look at yourself in the. Just be vain for a minute. Be vain. Be vain. Be vain. This? I offered you that before. Want to get down? There you go. Have fun. When he realizes he doesn't do anything, he's gonna be pissed. All right. Is the universal tale of revolution and reaction is the constant struggle between positive and its converse negative, which includes the reversal of roles. So the positive today is a negative tomorrow and vice versa, right? So what's good change today, what's good development today, right, will be negative tomorrow. Things grow out of fashion, right? For example, like the civil rights movement in the 60s, right, was like a good thing at the time, right? But now it's like it's not sufficient enough to last, right? There needs to be more work done today, right? Same thing, for example, with like like nuclear peace accords and non-proliferation treaties we had in the 80s, right? Now North Korea has weapons, Iran might have nuclear weapons, right? It's not sufficient. Things have to be kept pursuit. People have to keep pursuit of these kind of ideals, otherwise they will slip away, right? The sphere of nature recognizes that reality is dual. The principles of quantum mechanics and physics apply even more dramatically to the mechanics of mass movements. This is true not only in complementarity, but in the repudiation of the hitherto universal concepts of causality, whereby matter and physics were understood in terms of cause and effect. Wherefore, every effect there had to be a cause, and one always produced the other. In quantum mechanics, causality was largely replaced by probability. An electron or atom did not have to do anything specific in response to a particular force. There was just a set of probabilities that would react to this or that way. This is fundamental to the observations and propositions which follow. In no time in any discussion or analysis of mass movements, tactics, or any other phase of the problem, can be said that if this is done, then this will result. Most we can hope for is to achieve is an understanding of the probabilities consequent to certain actions. So what he's saying with all that kind of like gobbledygook science talk, right? It's saying that like in mass movements, because people are people, right? Everybody's different. Everybody reacts differently to different things. You can have the same thing happen to 4 different people, right? And like they'll all react differently to it, right? You have 4 guys in freaking Iraq who all get in the same explosion, right? One of them gets PTSD, 3 of them don't, right? You know, the same thing happens to them. Human beings are different and are various in the ways they look at reality. And so you can't just say it in the same way as freaking like Newton's law of motion, Newton's law of physics, or Newtonian laws of physics, rather, right? That like this cause equals this effect. If you take it around the governor's house, then he'll implement this policy, right? He might implement a policy. He might hear what you have to say. He might send the police on you, right? He might like stick the National Guard on you or the canines or whatever, right? So you can't have an exact guarantee of anything in a mass movement because it involves people. But you can have probabilities of things, right? You can set the system up as far as the actions you take so that have the best chance of promoting the reaction that you want, but there's no guarantee, right? It's not a science as such. And then he uses the example of quantum mechanics. So using the quantum physics, right, we realize that the cause and effects we observe in things, right, like the electron here moves over here when there's a freaking ionic charge that's been added to the molecule, right, or to the atom. And like we see that happens, we don't know exactly why that exact change happens, right? And the more we get into quantum mechanics and see below the atomic level of things, the more we realize that we're just observing kind of a picture show, a phenomena, and actually what we think is causing stuff to change doesn't actually cause it. Or if it does, it's not a method or a link that we actually can figure out right now, right? So he's saying the more we examine things, the more we realize what we don't know. That's his point right here, right? So just to have a grasp of probabilities as opposed to certainties is one of the main purposes of this manual on rules for radicals and having a revolution is like you can't predict the outcome exactly, but you can set yourself up for success in doing certain things. And so if you read ahead later on, right, we're going to get into the first section of it next time, is there are like 10 rules, and he gives like a list of 10 rules for radicals that are like short and pithy with explanations then, right? So for next time, let me go back to the table of contents. For next time, if y'all would do me a favor, we can stop reading the introductory notes. You're basically getting what he's saying, right? That like even things that look like they were going to be good kind of end up to be effed up if we don't keep after them. You can't guarantee something is going to change the way you want it to change. You can only do the best you can, and that there's always need for change moving forward to have our ideas and the meaning we want from our lives realized in a way that it only fits our generation or our set of generations, right? So we're going to go to the next time the second chapter, which is of means and ends. If you all will read, so this is page 39 through 45 of the PDF for next time for freaking Tuesday, 39 through 45. We'll talk about that, and then we want to. I don't feel like read all about in class. We'll just talk about it briefly and move on. Okay. All right. So that said, let's go ahead and move to the evidence sheets and the articles. So everybody pull up or pull out your article that you brought to class today. Is there anyone who lacks either an article or an electronic device to find an article, or just decides to gaff off and not do it all together? I'm not going to like shoot rubber bands at anybody or anything. Huh? Well, we're going to do them in class right now, and so you can then turn them in today. Yeah. So if you have the article, pull it out, and we're going to then start filling out the evidence sheet based upon that. Okay. So remember, everyone, at the top of the page, the proposition, right? Doing the same on every one of your evidence sheets, right? The proposition is the plan that you have for your plan sheet, just the short plan, right? We'll make marijuana legal. We'll reduce child sex trafficking. We'll make no-knock. We'll put a moratorium or into no-knock warrants. We'll ban abortion. We'll make abortion more accessible. We'll ban the use of fire. Whatever your freaking policy is, right? We'll go on the answer to number one, and it will be the same on all your evidence sheets. It even says right there, the policy should be the same on all evidence sheets, right? And so supporting claim number two then, right? The supporting claim comes from your article, right? But this is your own words. This is your own words of why the article that you are pulling up and citing from, right, helps your argument out, right? So the claim is like, if the claim was, or the policy was, how do you mess with the computer screen from down there? Anyways, so if your policy was about the legalization of marijuana, right, your claim would be like the legalization of marijuana would drastically reduce the number of individuals for nonviolent crimes in the prison system, or would increase government funding, or stop backlogging the courts. It's your own wording as to what you think your policy is going to do, right? Or it could be phrased in the negative, meaning like, right now the status quo produces these harms. So right now, like the fact that there's no pathway to citizenship for immigrants who are claiming asylum, right, is causing children to be put in cages, is causing families to be separate, whatever you want, right? The claim is in your own words. And then when you get to the data, number three, that's where you start quoting the article exactly, right? So number one is your proposition, your plan you're going to pursue. Two is in your own words what the data you're going to cite is doing for you, right? Like what you're claiming the data says. Three is actually quoting from the dang article, right? Four is you connecting the data that you just pulled from the article and the quotes to the claim and saying why the data you gave makes your claim true. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense, right? So I apologize that three might not be a big enough space to put all the quotes or whatever you want from your specific source. Yeah, so go ahead and start filling it out. I'll come around and answer any questions, or hey, dude, come here. Maybe I'll open up my office down here and hold him, and I'll just look at questions. I'll be walking one way, he'll be walking the other way. So feel free to bring your computer down too if you have your phone there. And we can also go through if you're like, okay, so what from this article would be my data, right? Like what quote should I use from this article to help my case? Go ahead and bring it down. We can go through it and look at it together and start picking out what the relevant data is. Basically, the data that you're going to look for, right? should be related to the claim that you're making in number 2, right? Awesome. My office is a little soggy now, so I'm gonna move it over. Good job, right? So like I was saying before I knocked the drink over, the supporting claim should help dictate what data you're pulling out of the article, right? If your supporting claim has to do with like percentage of nonviolent offenders in the prison system, right? Then probably the data you want to pull from your article has to deal with the amount of people who are nonviolent offenders in the prison system, right? So what I would like to get done at least today for everybody is numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. We could pass on because you can do that connect yourself, but get 5 and 8 done too, so we can make sure the MLA bibliography for all the articles you found is right today before we leave. Cool? So kind of workshopping class on that now. If people have a question, first and foremost about the bibliographic entry, right, we can handle that on a one-on-one basis, or put your hand up and I'll come by. Either way you want to do that, we make sure that's correct. Because once you have that done for one, it's easier to do the next article and so on and so forth. Don't throw it.
MLA.
So that's the thing to remember at the beginning that has those 8 points, right? So here, let's see. I'll pull it up on here if I can. Actually, here, come over here. I have it on this computer. So this is now off. So I mean, that's one of the author what's the article? There's a couple. Well, you're gonna need more. I mean, you're gonna need 6 of these things. So eventually, we're gonna. So what's the one we're working with? I know we have 5 of them. Let's go ahead and find some. What was the article?
The one that you looked up, it was the Cornell. I don't know what the expert was.
Constitutional law. Go get the ball, dude. Dude, go get the ball. Cool.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. So let's see. Just a little bit difficult because of it's a website, right? It's fine. Website. Let's see here. We do. We're gonna look at what is it? One of these, or just this whole thing right here?
I think it was kind of the whole thing, and then you deeper into it.
So let's look.
Criminal procedure.
Here we go. Here's the link for it. Oh, that's money. So yeah, so you can look here then, right? It's like the Supreme Court. I know you can't push buttons and it's not make the reactions that way all the time, right? It's not happening. All right, so this is Supreme Court case of Wilson, Richard versus Wilkinson. So let's look at here we go. So here's what we want is so the title is going to be or the author, right? is going to be corporate office is going to be Supreme Court, Wisconsin. So there's no like you don't put the commas or whatever. It's Supreme Court, Wisconsin. Period. Right. This Word document.
I think
You can't. I can just read emails. You can.
it's in the campus, right?
I mean, this thing right here,
Yeah.
MLA thing is the campus, but Supreme Court because it's found business.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I was talking about.
Yeah, and this thing's in Canada. Yeah. So authors look at the Supreme Court is nice. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin is the author. That the title is the name of the case. It's Richard George Wisconsin, right? The freaking title container with it has a container, right? Is the October term of 1996, which all the court registers from 1996 were heard. So October term 96. One second. Dude. So the version right be so that here's the dates for the version right.
I get it.
All right, cool. If it gets confusing, let me know too. Supreme Court cases are more difficult, or a court case are more difficult to cite than like in our New York Times.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you have this like 8 or 9 little freaking bullet points thing that's on the court files and under announcements, just like follow that and you should be more or less okay. If you have any questions about like what the author is or whatever, you can just email me or message me on Canvas and say like, what's the title of this thing? And I send me a link to it and I can freaking help out with like naming that for you too. So when we finish filling out the thing for your article you brought to class today, right? I would recommend taking a picture of it on your phone and uploading it to the Canvas site. I'll actually create a Dropbox for it right now. So upload this to the Canvas site, just a picture of it. So that way, if you like go home, if you window and it flies up in the car window or whatever, right? Or your mom like comes to your room and like throws all your crap away, and it's lost. You have to redo the freaking research, which is the biggest pain in the butt like ever in the world. Especially if you went through and got good quotes and are ready to roll with stuff, right? So, but Mr. Baby, feet first, buddy. Yes, sir. So it's from the plan sheet mostly, right? So like everything in the plan sheet's gonna be right here, right? And so each evidence sheet is gonna have a different claim, probably, right? Because for example, if you're doing like so your higher education, right? So one claim is like having funding for people of lower income would help the diversity of educational institutions, right? And then you find data to support that, and that's good for one evidence sheet. And then the next one is like having funding for lower income people to attend higher education would like increase like future ways. So for every different reasons why the funding would be, it would help people with lower income to have funding, right? Mm-hmm. You want a different evidence sheet and different source, right? Does that make sense? So this is basically like every argument you're making as to a reason why the policy should happen, right? Can have its own evidence sheet with its own source. And that's why there'll be 6 of these. So yeah, this is going to be the same on every single one. These claims should vary based upon what argument you're making, right? So yeah, I mean, it seems simplistic, like why don't you just make all the arguments right here? But you could probably, but then like it's doubtful you'll find all of the arguments in the same source. Yeah. And so each evidence sheet's for just one source. We keep them kind of cataloged, and it's easy to just put them in the paper later on. Okay. If that makes sense. Yeah. I will in a second. So I had on a thumb drive. I could, yeah, I will have it in a second.
Okay.
So I just went down, I was like, print them out, but no, I didn't have it posted. Thank you. I said I would, and I lied to y'all. I'm sorry.